Good morning, this is lecture 23. We're talking again about islands today, and then we're going to move into intersection design once we get through islands on that. This is not clicking. There we go. Now this is a little bit of review from last time. We had curved islands where we were building islands. Often use those divisional islands on isolated intersections on high-speed highways. And we were talking about the minimum side length should be about 100 feet, but preferably more than that, right? So the minimum would be 100. Again, that's for conspicuity. We want to be able to see it. It has to be evident to drivers as they approach for safety. So out in a rural, this was isolated high-speed highway areas, typically a rural situation, you're going to need to have a larger island to make sure people can see it. Right? The width of elongated islands, so if you have a divisional island that runs down the center of your road for ways, we talked about those. We looked at some pictures in the last in-class assignment on that. The width of those elongated islands should be a minimum of 4 feet wide. Again, that's easier for people to see, and they know it's there. A 2-foot one you can easily miss as you're approaching. Again, your eye is at a low angle as you're approaching it, and if it's only 2 feet wide, it's harder to see. So we try to go with a 4-foot minimum on that. And then we often use that 6-inch curb height, and that'd be our normal one for a traffic island. So the location of the curb islands, so we talked about how they were built and where we used them and the 3 different uses that we've got of them for divisional and for channelization and for refuge. And now we're also going to talk a bit about how to actually design them. These are design elements. Again, this is a course in transportation design. So how do you actually put those in there? So we talked about the size, roughly the size they should be and what kind of curbs they are and where we'd want to use them. And now let's look at some of the nuts and bolts about how you would design them safely to put them in there. So one of the first things we're going to look at is that we don't want to be too close to the edge of the through road, right? So here's the edge of our through road there. We want to offset a little bit from the edge of the travel lane. Here's where the cars will be going, right? We want to offset a little bit from the edge of the travel lane over to the face of that curb because you don't want people hitting that curb, right? And so they, usually at the leading edge, so cars are coming this direction, at the leading edge, we're usually a little bit further back from that edge of the traveled lane. And then we can get a little bit closer as we get through there. And if it's a minor road, we don't have to be as far off. If it's a major road or busier road location, we're going to want to be a little bit further offset through that. And so this is from the Astro Green book. You can look this up yourself if you want to know more details on it. But these are just some of the general principles that we're going to look at. It just depends on your traffic volume and the location where you're at. And there's a lot of judgment involved in this. As a designer, if you get a job designing these in the future, you know, it's not always, you're not always sure which situation you're in, right? So you could be, well, this is kind of a primary arterial, but it's a pretty low volume. It could be, which is possible. Through there, you want to adjust these a little bit, and it has to fit. We call it context sensitive. It has to fit where you're at. It has to fit the location where you're at, and so sometimes you don't have enough space, and you're going to have to make some. You'd like to be, over here, you'd like to be 3 feet off, but you may only be able to be 2 feet off because things are tight through there. So again, keep that in mind as we go through these. These are guidelines. There's no hard and fast rule about these, and so you're going to have to make decisions on your own through that. But the general idea we're going to talk about today should help that. Should help you pick out where you should be with that. So our location of our curb, we call our curved islands, the lateral clearance is that distance back over here. Again, this is your lateral clearance, is from the edge of the traveled lane over to the face of the curb through there. And so that's going to be a big issue, and again, it's sensitive to where you're at. So it depends on what kind of a road you're on, how far off the side of the road you need to be. And we're going to go through that in the next few slides as we go through. We typically round the corners on the islands, and so we don't want to have just a sharp break on it and come to a sharp angle. There's a lot of reasons we don't like those through there. So we usually use a radius on the edge, and we'll see some examples of that right through there. How far off again, back over to this picture, how far away from the edge of the travel lane to the face of the curb we are. It depends on a number of things. One of it is, what kind of road was it that you're on? Do you have curb and gutter normally on that road, or is it a rural road with a bunch of really big shoulders on it? That's going to make a difference. If you've got a radius in there, what's that length of the taper through that? How well is that island being able to be contrasted against the background so people can see it better? And then, is there any auxiliary pavement preceding that curbed island, which would be shoulders or an extra turn lane or something like that coming into it? And so those are all things we have to keep into account. Right? So we're going to cycle through some of these basic ones. Again, this is from the Green Book. You can see these pictures better in your Green Book. If you've got kind of low volume roads, this is local streets, not very high volume, fairly low speeds, below 40 miles per hour probably. Through there, maybe 35 would be better. Even than that, you can do a pretty simple design for an island like this one through here. And we're just going to offset from this is the edge of that traveled way. We're just going to offset over about 2 feet. And 2 feet, you'll see this in a lot of design. We call that the object-free zone on the edge of the road. We try to keep everything 2 feet back from the face of the curb. And so this would be if you have curb and gutter, this is the face of the curb here, or it would have been here through that. But from the edge of that travel lane, we like to be at least 2 feet back until we have some obstruction through there. And that's, sometimes we call it shy distance. You know, people don't always stay in their lanes perfectly and they wiggle around a bit. You know, that gives them that room before they hit something. You get at least 2 feet. This is typically more of an urban environment. Again, lower speeds, 35 and below would be ideal for this, and low volumes on this road. All right, through here. And obviously, you probably have a turning lane over here because you're never going to make a turn with that sharp radius there. All right, through that. The radii on the ends of these islands tend to be about 2 foot radius. And that's about your minimum that you're going to use through there, through that. Excuse me. As traffic increases, we're going to pull back that leading edge of the island even more. So over on this one, this is probably a lower volume road still. This is a higher volume road or a little bit higher speed. So this is the intermediate design. We're going to pull back that offset, that lateral clearance on the leading edge. So that, again, the vehicles are coming in from over here. We're going to scoot this guy back to here. And so that gives us that leading edge a little bit more offset, and then we can sneak it up closer as we go. And I've used this concept a lot in the designs I've done, where that leading edge I keep further away from the road, and it gives you, in case they didn't see it right away, now that they're adjacent to the island, oh, I see the curb there now, and I'll stay over here in my lane. All right, so at the beginning we move it further back just so it decreases the likelihood someone's going to hit the nose on that island as they come around through there. And some of the people who hit these are plow drivers. Right? Snow plow drivers are kind of hard on islands because they can't see them. If it's really blowing and we've got a fair bit of snow, they're not going to see those. So it also helps them to push this back a little bit further, then they'll know it's there. And then if they do come in contact with it somewhere in here, it's a much gentler contact than it would have been if they hit that nose. That's a very hard one. All right, through there. So again, this would be an intermediate design, 4 to 6 feet off at the leading edge, about 2 feet off at the trailing edge of that. And then again, as we move up in, I guess you'd say, functional class, as we move up in categories of roads, then these offsets get bigger, tend to get bigger, right? And we may use larger radii on these corners right here. I tend to use more of the 5 foot radius down here. 5 to 10 would be more. I rarely would use a 2 foot on this inside corner. All right, through there. If you're out in the countryside, right, where you've got a shoulder and you're in a rural situation, you have shoulders, we tend to use the same shoulder width. Whatever your shoulder width was on the road coming in, we match that and would use the same shoulder width back here, because that's the distance you need to be safe before you hit something. That's what we figured it out from over here on whatever speed you're going. Then we're going to use that same shoulder width for that offset between the island and the edge of the travel lane as we go through there. All right. So then, and this would be, again, this mainline highway, so if whatever shoulder you've got, we would match that. We try to match that up here, and then we can put radii here at each of the corners through there. And then whatever width, shoulder width is here, you'd match it on that side. So these may not be the same, right? So this road may not need as much shoulder. You could just match whatever that shoulder width you needed for this road over here. Same with this one, you could use that one there, right, through there. And these are just bigger islands. This is a smaller island. This is a bigger island. You know, same idea though. You're going to match that shoulder width. You're going to try to match that as best you can through there. Even the path of vehicles who are turning. So if you've got this turning path through here, even based off that path, you want to offset a little bit in here, right? So that same idea as before. You want to have a certain offset through there. The reason we don't vary the offset much on these rural locations where we've got shoulders is because this is probably already 6 to 8 feet over, right? It doesn't really help to have this go 10 down to 8 feet. You know, you might as well just hold that shoulder width the same all the way across, right? Where it's 2 feet away, yeah, it does matter. We should try to get a little bit more distance on that leading edge, on the leading nose. Through there. This is from the NDOT design manual showing what one of their rural locations look like. You can see down here, here's their shoulder. They're matching the shoulder width. And so here their delta is equal to the offset island tobacco shoulder. So they are matching that shoulder offset exactly to, this is the edge of the traveled lane. This would be a striped line. This is a striping plan through there. That distance is equal to the shoulder width you would have down here, right? And this distance is equal to the shoulder width you'd have over here. Again, they may not be the same, right? This is a minor road. This is the major road. Quite often, you know, the minor road will have, you won't need as much shoulder, so you'd match whatever that is. And even going around the turning island, you're still going to want to have some offset between where nominally your lane would be, which is that your edge of travel lane there, and the face of that shoulder, right, through that. And this is also showing you how to design the tapers and the radii, which we talked about that before spring break through there, right? So this is a kind of a close-up. Again, we're just seeing what the striping plan looks like. This is the pavement markings, as we call it the striping plan for a road. And so you can see where this would be a white line, and you'd have these white diagonals painted across here. And then this darker hatching in here is the actual constructed island. And so in a rural situation, they're going to use a raised corrugated island. I've got a picture of that coming up. You can see through there. Here's another example of their triangular island. Through that, this is a lower volume situation. They're just going to use a straight 2-foot offset on all sides through that. All right, so that's one more option that they're using for that. This is from road design plans from Elkhart County. Here's the island. This is in the construction drawing set. Our page, this is the plan and profile. You can see here's our raised concrete island. It's got curb and gutter around it. It's got a 5-foot radius out here on this end, 2 foot there and a 2 foot there. And it's a typical, and the turning island is 24 feet wide. We'll talk about that at the end of today's lecture as we get into that. Here's what the striping plan for that same intersection looks like. In the construction plans, you don't see where the lines are, where the pavement markings are, where the striping is. In this one, it shows you, so this looks like it's just hiding out here. This island is all by itself, and it just magically appears. It's actually got all this striping around it to delineate it so people can see it and stay off of it. And this is a rural situation, so I didn't increase this offset at all on the original nose. I just matched what the shoulder width was in both of those roads. This is the main line. This is the side road over here. So that's an example. This is an urban environment design example, same kind of idea. Here it is. I'm using a 3-foot radius on the corner, 10-foot one out here. Because even though there's a turning roadway, there's always somebody who decides too late they wanted to turn there, and they're going to turn up here onto the main road. So I'd like to use a little bit bigger radius. Yeah, that isn't going to handle a truck in any way, but it'll handle a passenger car. They can make it around there through that. So here's our turning roadway. Here's the striping plan. There is white striping all the way around it through there, delineating that off. And this one's being used both as a channelization island and also as a pedestrian refuge. You can see the crosswalks coming across through there. You can see the crosswalks here, but you don't see the striping because this doesn't show striping on the plan and profile sheet. You have a separate sheet in the plans that shows that. All right. And then turning roadways, this is, again, a term that we use more for larger structures, I guess, larger intersections where we're expecting trucks, particularly trucks, to be using this turning roadway to come around here through that. And that leads in again to how we would, what we're going to be talking about at the end of today's lecture and how to design this turn lane itself. Right now we're talking about the island. At the end of the lecture, we'll be talking about how to actually design this. This width is a big piece of our design, and so we're going to talk about how that's all calculated. Here's a couple examples. This was a newer project. This was built about 6-7 years ago. It's the new US 31 going between Plymouth and South Bend. And when they built this was they had a big push here in the state about 10 years ago to move 31 up to more freeway status. And it used to have all these at-grade intersections, and it was fairly dangerous. And through there, a lot of accident rates. So this is the new intersection, and this is a diamond interchange at US 6 and US 31. You see 31 here. Here's the off ramp, and then here's the on ramp going back on. See US 31, and these are turning roadways. So that's what we were just talking about. Very rural setting, very high speed. Both the ramp is not expected to be 55 miles per hour. This is probably designed for more about 25 coming around that corner. There, this is a stop condition there, but US 6 is 55 miles per hour across there, and 31 is actually 65 miles per hour design speeds on that. So again, very rural locations, a little different there. With these turning roadways, one thing we talked about last time was that one of the reasons to use an island is that if you didn't, you'd have all this empty space. See all the space in here? That's confusing the drivers, right? They see this, they can see the edge of the road going around, but what am I supposed to do with all that space, right? Some people will park out in the middle of it, basically, if there wasn't an island there. So the island helps that channelization and keeps people from being confused by all that extra space through there. So that's one of the main uses of channelization islands through there. And there's no pedestrians out here, so this is not being used for pedestrian refuge. And you'll see here in a second why it's not. This is one of NDOT's rural treatments. They call this a raised corrugated island. And so this is a picture from that location. This is actually at this island right here. So I'm going to be standing right here with the camera. Here's the island I'm taking a picture of. So this is coming up on it. This is that raised corrugated island. Right? And so you say, well, that doesn't have the 6-inch curb. No, it doesn't. So why doesn't this island have a 6-inch curb? Right? So again, this is a high-speed situation. So 6-inch curb is considered a hazard if you're in that environment. So that's why NDOT uses this raised corrugated island. And you can see this thing is only about 2 inches tall, right? Through there. And you can see where the snow plows have chewed off the leading edge of this thing. So they don't see it in the snow and they just run right up over it and have peeled off the first corrugations through there, and also a little bit along this edge through that. But this isn't terribly hazardous, right? If you hit this, you'll feel it, but it isn't going to hurt you, right? And so this is what NDOT likes to use in the rural situations, raised corrugated island, right? So is this raised corrugated island built properly? Yeah, I'd say no, right? So you're supposed to offset this thing, your shoulder width. Here's their shoulder width, is up here, right? That's their shoulder width. They should have probably cut this thing off back here, right? But they built it right up to the edge of the traveled lane. And again, it's not going to hurt you. So it's a 6-inch island. This would be a hazard if they built that right up to the edge. A raised corrugated island, yeah, it's just going to rumble. It's like a rumble strip like these up here. You'll feel it. But even by their own standards back here, they should have used, even for their raised corrugated island, here's their raised corrugated island, they should have used that offset, and they did not. So I don't know if that was a design issue or if that was a contractor issue, but it's been in place, like, again, more than 5 years, and it's apparently not really causing trouble, or they would have had to pull it out by now. So, but this is, I wanted to show this picture to give you an idea what a rural raised corrugated island looks like, different than what we would use in an urban environment through there. And then the picture of it, so you can see the corrugations in it, right? So it keeps people off of it. You don't want to drive over there, and you realize that space isn't being used for anything. And here's this lane, or here's that lane, and that's what the island is doing. It's channelizing traffic. You know which way you're supposed to be, right? So, and then before we were looking, excuse me, at how the islands looked through here. Now we're going to look at how to design this turning roadway. So here's that turning roadway, right? So what are some of the issues with a turning roadway? We've talked before break about what radius we wanted to use on our roads and how to design the radius and the offsets and the tapers as we come through those. And we're going to have a homework on that shortly through there. The other thing we need to look at in these turning roadway ones is as a truck turns, right, they don't, our standard lane is 12 feet wide, or 3.6 meters. As they turn, the wheels offset and they get much wider, right? And so you can see in here, this is a 21-foot distance. In here, here's a 25-foot distance. It depends on they call this case A, B, and C. We're going to see here in a second how they delineate that. This is full-size semis. This is passenger cars only. In the passenger car only, we would widen from basically a 12-foot lane to a 14-foot lane to give people a little more space to turn through there, because your vehicle tracks wider than turning. It tracks wider than it would if you were going straight. And if this is a medium-sized, probably straight trucks and so forth, they're going to get wider yet. You're going to go up to 21 feet wide. If you have a full-size semi, they're suggesting 25 feet through there. And we'll see that difference. So this is how to design that turning roadway. We can't maintain that same width as we normally would in the lane, because as you turn, the path your vehicle sweeps through is actually wider, obviously, than it would be if it was going straight, right? So here's what AASHTO recommends. This is from the Green Book. Again, so a 90-degree turn, that's our most standard one, right? You have three different categories. You have case A, B, and C through there, and they're using a three-centered curve through that, and that's what they were using for their turning roadway design. And here's the offset on that three-centered curve. That's the center radius is offset this much through there. Here's the lane width. That's what we really care about for today, is what's that lane width, 14, 21, or 25, and you'll see that's what's listed here, 14, 21, and 25. That's where they're pulling those numbers from. And down here it tells you what those design classifications mean. This is passenger cars. This is the straight unit trucks and smaller semis through there, and this would be for a lot of semis, is what AASHTO is suggesting through that. Here's the approximate island size. Remember, we said in a rural situation, you probably want at least 100 square feet in your island. This is giving you a rough approximation of what that would be. Now, in most rural situations, we're going to be designing for trucks, so we're not going to be using case A for those. Pretty much never out in a rural situation. You're always going to expect trucks in rural locations. There's some urban environments, maybe you don't, but most rural ones you're going to expect trucks to be there. Maybe not always the biggest trucks, but at least a WB50, right? The medium-sized semi-trailer. So this is so their class C is large trucks coming through there, and you have to, depending on how sharp the turn is, you may need to have a really wide turning roadway. Look at these. It's 38, 52 feet. 42 or 53 feet. It's a huge turn. It's almost turning completely around through there. This would be a little more normal range, 105, 120 degree turns. Those are not uncommon. Even that width of that road would have to be 45 feet. All right, and that would be this width in here. So if this angle was more like coming down this direction, that's quite a turn. You'd have to have an even wider width in there to accommodate a truck, right? Their swept path gets even wider when you sharpen up the curve through that. This is what NDOT says to use. This is their for their turning roadway design. See, turning roadway. There we go through there. They like to split theirs out by per vehicle through that, right? So what's the Indiana design vehicle? If you were designing for an interstate or a freeway situation in Indiana, you have to design for the Indiana design vehicle. Do you remember what that was? Yeah, right. That's a WV67. So this column is what you'd be using for design on any state highway, any state highway, anything NDOT would hire you to do, you're going to be using probably this, the WB67, right? These are huge. I've never designed for one of those before. Those are really big. All right, so the WB67, this is the column we're going to be looking at mostly through here. And you can see for whatever your inside radius is, and so if you have a 100-foot radius on the inside, I need a 21-foot wide turning lane, right, through there. And that's if I have one lane, one-way operation. This is like an off-ramp, like we just looked at, where you don't have enough room to pass the stalled vehicle. If you want to be able to get around, if someone stalls out on your ramp and you want to be able to get around them, you'd have to jump up to these numbers, right? Instead of 20, what did I say before? If we had a 100-foot radius, it was 21 feet. If we have a 100-foot radius, you need 34 if you're going to be able to get around them. Why would we take that into account? Why would we care about being able to pass a stalled vehicle on the ramp? Right. That's emergency vehicles, right? So if a truck breaks down in that lane, you still want to be able to get a fire truck or an ambulance past them. And so we would typically want to use this. We'd want to use this one. If you've got a shoulder, we say, well, that counts. You can use the shoulder and get around them, as long as you've got enough space in there for that. If it's a tighter situation, like a freeway coming into a town, and you've got curb and gutter or barrier, use a barrier rail wall along one side, then you're going to have to use this full width down in here. So you would, again, go to that. You'd be using that 34 width and not that 21-foot width. And that will allow an emergency vehicle to pass. Right. If it's a location where you don't think that's ever going to be a problem, there's alternate routes for emergency vehicles to get through, then you don't have to worry about that right through there. This is the Indiana version of this again. So we still got this class A, B, and C. Now theirs are going to be a little different. Their A and B are the same as the AASHTO, but they have modified what their design class C is. So if we went for the 90-degree turning roadway, we would do a compound curve using 180-foot radius, 65-foot radius, 180-foot radius, and then our turn lane width would be 20 feet. And approximate island size of 125. Right. Through there. They're designing their turning roadways to fully handle a WB50, which is not the Indiana design vehicle. It's one size down from that. But what it does is, if you design fully for a WB50, a 67 can get through there fine usually. And like I say, you've almost always got a shoulder, so one can get through it. It's just you can't. W67 is going to have to go a little slower and pay a little more close attention to it. Side by side, here's the difference between the AASHTO and the NDOT design. You're going to see this Class C range here. They're designing for a much larger vehicle. Here's NDOT's. My guess is that, I mean, look at the size of this island. That's 360 square feet. They're using a 50 square footer for that 75-degree turn. My guess is that NDOT decided WB50 typically can handle that WB67 truck. They don't have to fully design for it. And the reason they don't want to is probably cost, because these are huge islands. These things are, you jumped from a 150-foot radius to a 200-foot radius. That's a big deal. Look how much bigger that island is. They're like, well, we can get by with this, with the WB50. The 67s can handle it. They just can't go at full, what their normal speed would have been through the turning roadway. But it's not worth it to us to build that much bigger, because that takes up so much more space and is more expensive through there. That's my guess why NDOT toned down the AASHTO guidelines. Now, most state guidelines originate from the Green Book, and then they adapt them for the use in their own state, and that's what I think they're doing here. Is they started with this table and they adapted it for NDOT for use in Indiana through there. So the horizontal alignment. So that's the turning roadway piece. So the main thing to remember is we have to widen the roadway as it goes around the turn right through there. So we talked about the islands. The islands are channelizing and splitting the turning roadway off from the main road, but then we also have to widen out that lane to be able to handle the vehicles through it. And now you've got the guides to show you how to do that. The next piece we're going to talk about is how to align your at-grade intersections. So again, you've got a road two roads are intersecting. The incoming road, how do we want to line that up as it comes into our main line right through there? So the things to keep in mind is we want there to be good visibility. Everybody needs to be able to see well. And that's safety, and that's all about safety. And that if they can see the hazards and see what's coming up, people can make good decisions about how to drive, better decisions, I should say, about how to drive. That's why we want good visibility, right? And if we line them up right, it's going to require total less area in total for that turning roadway at the intersection there. And we want to get people across or into or off of the main road as quickly as possible, which we call lowering exposure time down here. Is if you've got, and we'll show you in a picture here in a second, if you've got a high skew angle and people are entering the road at 20-degree angle or something, or trying to cross at 20 degrees, they're actually out in the road longer than if they were crossing straight across at 90 degrees. And so we want to lower that exposure time, right? So here's some examples. This is quite often, back in the horse and buggy days, no one really cared because things are moving slow and you're always going to have time to cross, or low volume situations. Didn't really matter, right? And so if you're on the side road and you're crossing at this skew angle like this, you are going to be out in this road longer to get across. And so what we try to do is we try to straighten those up and try to cross as close as possible to 90 degrees through there. You can bring it all over to one side. You can keep it kind of equal, and we'll have an S-curve on either side of it. Both ways, we're crossing more at 90 degrees, and that's what we want through there. So the horizontal alignment for at grade intersections, again, it's the skew angle. If it's a really steep skew, you can actually tee in both sides. So we're going to tee in there, we're going to tee in there, or if it's coming from the other direction, we'll tee in that way. All right. And D is preferred because the minor road vehicles, in this case, these minor road vehicles are going to be able to make a right turn and exit. So the major road can make the right turn and come in here through that. Whereas over here, they'd have to turn left to cross traffic. So they would prefer you skew on this side through that. Again, I think it's the same exact slide. Trying to remember what the difference here was. This is a good example of this is just out west of Valparaiso, Lincoln Way and State Road 130. This Lincoln Way used to run at an angle, basically headed for Chicago right from Valparaiso. So it crosses a lot of the traditional county roads at an angle. And so here's one of the county roads comes in at this sharp angle. There's a number of them out there west of town, and that's pretty common when you have a road running at an angle, because every other road in the state's built basically right on the old section lines, the survey section lines. So they're due north and south or due east and west. So if you've got a diagonal road, you'll get a lot of these intersections. And so Lincoln Way has a number of those county roads coming in at an angle like that, right? And this isn't good. So if you came up here and you were trying to merge into this, you have to turn your head around, more than 90 degrees, more like 150 degrees, to be able to see oncoming cars. And that's the dangerous piece. And that's what we don't like, right, through there. Plus, cars coming this way may think, oh, it's a straight shot, I don't need to slow down. And they're going to try to shoot the gap of cars approaching this way. And that's dangerous. That's another big issue with these is someone lives over here, he's coming eastbound, they're just going to shoot right across this road and get onto this county road. They aren't looking for, well, they are maybe looking at cars coming this way, but they think they can beat them. And at 60 miles per hour, it's really easy to misjudge that gap, and then that'll cause a wreck, and a high-speed wreck too, and a head-on. So it's a really bad kind of wreck to have through there. So how can we fix this? We could bend this road in here and come in 90 degrees and just have a T into it. Right, when T in 90 degrees, now you have to almost stop before you turn into it, so you're in a good position to safely turn. And also, people used to come out of these side roads and not stop and think, oh, I can beat that car coming and merge right on it, treat it like a merge ramp, which it's not. It's a state highway. It's a two-lane road, so it doesn't work well like that. This was one at US 6 where Plymouth Goshen Trail came into it. Obviously between Plymouth and Goshen, up by Bremen through there. This road used to come in at a high angle, and so Plymouth Goshen Trail runs diagonally across the middle part of the state. It was one of the original roads the settlers used in the 1840s. It was literally a trail between Plymouth and Goshen. Later got paved and became a county road in most places through there, and occasionally it gets overlapped by the state highways too. So it was running diagonally, and it would come in here, and it actually came across here and merged into 6 right there. And it had a high accident rate through there. So this is what it looks like now, and this is what the original alignment was of that road. And so about 15 years ago, they had a design project that redesigned this, right, and brought it in over here, right. So before, people would come across here and try to beat the gap and just shoot straight on the Plymouth Goshen Trail, because why stop if you don't have to? And it's that convenient angle. You could, and it was literally a straight shot onto it from there. People who were sleepy and not paying attention and thought they were on US 6 would sometimes not realize it and run straight across through there, because they could see that there was a road straight ahead of them through there, and despite some warning signs and everything else, not realize that the main road curved through that, and they should have stopped and waited, and it also caused wrecks through that. And then people coming down Plymouth Goshen Trail would try to merge straight on the 6 and not wait for vehicles on 6 here going westbound through that. So they moved it over here, and now they added a passing blister in, so you can safely wait here until you get a gap and then turn and go up Plymouth Goshen Trail. And coming down, you can come here. You're only looking 90 degrees to your left, and much easier to see, and you can safely pull out. So that reduced the number of crashes there by doing that. Here's what the original from an old aerial looked like. Right, you can see. So that's what it is now. This is what it was before. Right, I'm not sure how many years ago this was, but it's been a while. So there wasn't even a NIPSCO substation there at that point through that. So that's how that came. And actually, they'd built a little side road in here so you could come around this way and get back on, because this angle is too hard for a truck to turn. So you have a little cutoff road there. Just not a good design. Right. It works fine, maybe with really low volumes, but it became problematic. Here's another one. This is up in Elkhart County. This is State Road 19 at State Road 119. And 119 also runs at an angle. It's the continuation of Plymouth Goshen Trail, actually, as it heads into Goshen. So it was originally a trail through there. State Road 19 was originally built due north-south, right on one of the section lines through there. This is what the old State Road 119 and 19 used to like. Here's 119 coming in. Here's State Road 19. And there's a side county road that crosses in the middle of this and then continues on over here. It's a gravel road, but that was county roads coming through there. And this was signalized. This had a traffic signal, and so there was a signal here. So if you're coming south, you don't have to stop here, but you had to stop here and wait, and then you would get the green light and you'd proceed. And moving north, your stop line was here and you'd wait, and moving south, your stop line was here. This wasn't signalized. This part wasn't, so that also caused trouble through there. So a few years ago, there was a truck came south. He was supposed to be going back northeast on 119 and should have taken this little road across, missed that road, came down here at the light, and then tried to turn and then got stuck. And he's blocking all the way across here. And I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning, some van came up and didn't see the trailer. I guess the lights and stuff on the trailer weren't obvious enough and ran into the side of it. So that was I don't think anybody was killed, but it was a bad enough wreck. And that was a common problem. It's just this weird geometry. And if you're not from the area, you don't know you're supposed to use this little cutoff county road. This little piece here was county road through that. So there was just a lot of issues. So about 10 years ago, INDOT came through and put in this roundabout through there. Well, they started the process. The roundabout's probably been in operations about 6-7 years now up there. So it's fairly new, right? So they've, you can see from here, this straight through, they've actually warped the road over to provide curvature for the roundabout design. You get all the nice roundabout curvature coming in. You've got divisional islands and channelization islands. So look at that. There's no pedestrians out here, so there's no refuge piece. But these are actually working as both channelization and division. They are also division because they're really long, so they're dividing the road all the way back. That was a question I got on the ICA last time. This county road that came in into this at this crazy angle, right, which was dangerous and bad. And so they turned it. It comes in not quite 90 degrees, but pretty close, within 20 degrees of 90. So that's safe now. And so that's a much safer approach. I keep pushing the wrong buttons. This county road that came in and came straight across and had a weird angle, right? It ties into here. You have to go around the roundabout now to come back out through that. So this was a safety improvement. That was the main reason for this operationally. And it's a really big roundabout. This is a heavy truck route. It has a lot of manufactured homes, which are really long through there. So they had to make this extra large radii and stuff going through that circle. So that's an example. They fixed a number of operational problems and realigned these roads to make a better intersection design. So I thought that was a good one to show you the differences in the skews. This is what NDOT, their manual says, that you'd prefer to be 90 degrees coming in, but if you're 20 degrees off of that, that's okay. And up to 30 would be your maximum. Try to stay within 20. Again, that's safety. That's so people don't have to turn their head too far to see what's going on right through there. This one was 30 degrees. Well, you can realign that. Oh, look, it looks very similar to the Astro Green Book examples. This one looks very similar to the Astro Green Book. That's where all the stuff comes from, right through here. Or this was like that Plymouth Goshen Trail route. They just moved it down and teed it in to the main road through there. So that's the safety piece. All right, that's all we've got for today. We'll see you next time.